Hello, my sisters and brothers out there in the world. Today I am going to narrate Inspired Talks by Swami Vivekananda. And I am confident that if you listen to Inspired Talks, it is not only going to help you immensely in your life, but also it is going to give you clarity and a peaceful mind, regardless of what is going on in the outside world. By narrating this life changing book to all of you, I too shall learn at the same time as you. So, without further ado, let me start with Inspired Talks. This upstairs piazza played an important part in our lives, as all the Swami's evening talks were given here. It was wide and roomy, roofed in, and extended along the south and west sides of the cottage. Miss D had the west side of it carefully screened off by a partition, so that none of the strangers who frequently visited the piazza to see the magnificent view it commanded could intrude upon our privacy. There, close by his own door, sat our beloved teacher every evening during our stay, and communed with us who sat silent in the darkness, eagerly drinking in his inspired words. The place was a veritable sanctuary. At our feet, like a sea of green, waved the leaves of the treetops, for the entire place was surrounded by thick woods. Not one house of the large village could be seen. It was as if we were in the heart of some dense forest, miles away from the haunts of men. Beyond the trees spread the wide expanse of the St. Lawrence, dotted here and there with islands, some of which gleamed bright with lights of hotels and boarding houses. All these were so far away that they seemed more like a pictured scene than a reality. Not a human sound penetrated our seclusion. We heard but the murmur of the insects, the sweet songs of the birds, or the gentle sighing of the wind through the leaves. Part of the time the scene was illumined by the soft rays of the moon, and her face was mirrored in the shining waters beneath. In this scene of enchantment, the world forgetting by the world forgot, we spent 7 blessed weeks with our beloved teacher, listening to his words of inspiration. Immediately after our evening meal each day of our stay, we all repaired to the upper piazza and awaited the coming of our master. Nor had we long to wait, for hardly had we assembled, here the door of his room would open, and he would quietly step out and take his accustomed seat. He always spent 2 hours with us, and more often much longer. One glorious night when the moon was about the full, he talked to us until she set below the western horizon, apparently as unconscious as we were of the lapse of time. Of these talks it was not possible to take notes. They are preserved only in the hearts of the hearers. None of us can ever forget the uplift, the intense spiritual life of those hallowed hours. The Swami poured out all his heart at those times. His own struggles were enacted again before us. The very spirit of his master seemed to speak through his lips, to satisfy all doubts, to answer all questioning, to soothe every fear. Many times the Swami seemed hardly conscious of our presence, and then we almost held our breath for fear of disturbing him and checking the flow of his thoughts. He would then rise from his seat and pace up and down the narrow limits of the piazza, pouring forth a perfect torrent of eloquence. Never was he more gentle, more lovable than during these hours. It may have been much like the way his own great master taught his disciples, just allowing them to listen to the outpourings of his own spirit in communion with himself. It was a perpetual inspiration to live with a man like Swami Vivekananda. From morning till night it was ever the same. We lived in a constant atmosphere of intense spirituality. often playful and fun-loving, full of merry jest and quick repartee. He was never for a moment far from the dominating note of his life. Everything could furnish a text or an illustration, and in a moment we would find ourselves swept from amusing tales of Hindu mythology to the deepest philosophy. The Swami had an inexhaustible fund of mythological lore, and surely no race is more abundantly supplied with myths than those ancient Aryans. He loved to tell them to us, and we were delighted to listen, for he never failed to point out the reality hidden under the myth and story, and to draw from it valuable spiritual lessons. Never had fortunate students greater cause to congratulate themselves on having so gifted a teacher. By a singular coincidence, just 12 students followed the Swami to Thousand Island Park, and he told us that he accepted us as real disciples, and that was why he so constantly and freely taught us, giving us his best. All the 12 were not together at once, 10 being the largest number present at any one time. Two of our number subsequently became sannyasins, both being initiated at Thousand Island Park. On the occasion of the consecration of the second sannyasin, Swami initiated 5 of us as brahmacharins. And later in New York City, the rest of our number took initiation, together with several others of the Swami's disciples there. It was decided when we went to Thousand Island Park that we should live as a community, each doing his or her share of the housework, in order that no alien presence should mar the serenity of our household. The Swami himself was an accomplished cook, and often prepared for us delicious dishes. He had learned how to cook when, after his master's death, he had served his brethren, a band of young men, his fellow disciples, whom he held together and taught, continuing the training begun by his master, in order that they might be fitted to spread abroad over the world the truths imparted by Sri Ramakrishna. Every morning, just as soon as our various tasks were over, and often before, the Swami called us together in the large parlour that served us as classroom and began to teach us. Each day he took up some special subject or expounded from some sacred book, as the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, or the Vedanta Sutras of Vyasa. The sutras are in the form of aphorisms, being the briefest possible statements of the great truths embedded in the Vedas. They have neither nominative nor verb, and so intent were the writers of them on eliminating every unnecessary word that a Hindu proverb says that a writer of sutras would rather give one of his sons than add a syllable to his sutras. I end the episode here. In the next episode, I shall pick up where I left off, with the hope that you too shall stay with me and accompany me with this wondrous book by this great master. I shall see you all in the next episode. Till then, take care everyone. I wish you all a very, very peaceful mind. Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti.